Hello, everyone, and welcome to RHAP's coverage of Australian Survivor v. World. Right? Is that what we're saying?
Australia versus the world.
World, whatever. I'm your host, Shannon Guss, here already butchering an intro. I should have swapped roles with my guest, but I'm here to talk about, on our series of players, everything you need to know about these players. I'm here to talk about Lisa Holmes, the winner, spoiler, of Survivor New Zealand, who is going to be playing AUV World. And it's such a full circle moment in so many ways because this was my first season covering it. And my first podcast covering it was the preview podcast talking about this person and then all the other players from that season with my guest. And I was so excited. I always remember messaging. And then I told my mom, I said, I booked Mike Bloom. I'm so good. I feel like I've done my first task as a podcaster, and I'm so excited to talk to him. And I hope person for the first time on that podcast, and now here he is. It is the great Mike Bloom. Thank you for being here, Mike. I've a lot as a podcaster in the last 7+ years.
I am so happy to be here for many reasons. First, yes, it does feel like, I guess, a podcaster rite of passage to book me on a podcast because I am so readily available to appear on anything. And
that's not how it felt at the time. And like now, it is kind of comical that I was like, I booked Mike Bloom. It's like, yeah, you and who else? But at the time, I was like, I did it. I got this major get. I got Mike. I'm such a fan, and I was like fangirling over it. That's
oh my God. Well, now I've gotten the opportunity to fangirl over you for the past 7 years, Shannon, as we're coming full circle back to the very first season you covered, the very first winner that you covered. And while you booked me, we're going to be talking about somebody who knew her way around books back in the day, in Lisa, who was a school librarian. I'm thrilled about this. When you were going through this entire exercise and, you asked me who I wanted to talk about, I knew when I saw Lisa on that list, I had to give it a tick and get the chance to talk about her and her game.
Yeah, and I mean, look, all of these puns are why you were such a bookable guest, but yeah, I mean, we could have plugged you in anyway, let's be honest, because you've seen all of these players, which is a difficult thing because they're from all over, and that's why we're doing this series, because I think that's probably quite rare. I mean, you haven't seen Phil in Quebec. I'm making my way through so that I can say that I have, but even of the 12, Lisa's probably lesser known for, it's her and Rob that are probably, and maybe Lisa the most, that are lesser known compared to obviously the Americans and the Australians. And it's so interesting seeing Lisa come back because, her show is so canceled. Like it has not been on in this month. I think she won in July. 7 years. It's this month since she won. And Survivor New Zealand was gone, like completely gone. So like the odds of her even playing again was so low, let alone AUV World, let alone the fact like, if you don't know Lisa, here's starting with everything you need to know about Lisa. She's a huge super fan. She won in her RHAP shirt. She was wearing an RHAP shirt, which was so cool at the time. And it's still cool now. Why has no one else done that, by the way, in the new era of super fans?
Well, listen, if we have a live reunion for Survivor 50, there's a chance it might happen again, Shannon.
No, stuff a RGB shirt in your pocket, you pull it out for the non-live reunion. I think that would be the real dedication. But she was, such a huge fan. So for her to be on AUV World with someone like Sari, who I'm pretty sure she spoke about in Survivor New Zealand, let alone doing her own 3-2-1. I said it in the Sari podcast, but she's gonna faint on sight. And I think in much the way like Adam was in Winners at War, she's gonna be like our proxy. And I'm not meaning to insult Lisa because she won the show, like much like Adam, but it still kind of feels like you are what I would be like if I got dropped into this situation, and I'm happy for her. And that's how it's going to feel. It's like seeing it through her eyes.
Yeah, not to say that Lisa did not earn a spot on her own merit. We're certainly going to get into her incredibly impressive game and win subsequently. But I think you bring up a great point that from an archetype perspective, I do think there's a lot of value, especially in these big milestone seasons, to have somebody there as the audience surrogate to be like, I don't know if you realize how big of a deal this is right now. Because, again, the caliber of people that they brought back, they might be a little too cool for school. For a lot of them, this is not their first returnee season. Not only is it Lisa's first returnee season, especially in a time where, as you mentioned, there was probably a good period of time when she thought that she would never get the chance to come back. Like, I remember around 2018, 2019, when we were sweet summer children, thinking like, okay, we'll get Survivor New Zealand every year. Oh, that'd be fun if they did Survivor Australia versus New Zealand, or New Zealand versus Australia versus South Africa. Now Australia is sort of the sole Survivor perspective. But for her to get the chance to come back here and play alongside some people that she has been watching since the very beginning, and sort of existing, to your point, as this enigma, right? Like, yes, this is a fellow oceanic Survivor franchise, but it hasn't really been talked about for the better part of over half a decade. And so I think what will be really interesting to get into, especially when we talk about her place in the tribe, is I'm sure some of these people did their research, but how much
Did
research
they go to
did they?
New Zealand?
Yeah, like
I
I mean,
doubt
there's a
it.
chance that obviously I think our two people from non-English speaking franchises will be the biggest X factors. She might be the Y factor. She might be the next closest, considering that obvious Australia, easily accessible, has a lot of seasons. These are big players. South Africa, you could find a way to find a way. New Zealand's a little tougher. We had to go back.
Well, not in Australia.
Oh, interesting. Is that
We
I
have
didn't know if,
it.
I didn't know if it was still on demand or not.
Yeah, I just watched the finale.
Okay.
I watched Lisa's finale highlights. So I mean, there's no excuse. But maybe it's not accessibility, Mike. Like, you're giving them a lot of credit that
Yeah.
that's why they wouldn't watch. I just don't think that they necessarily got there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance that it was like, okay, you're coming back for Survivor Australia versus the world. If you're not given the tip, hey, you might want to check out Survivor New Zealand from 6-7 years ago, they most likely left it off their watch list. Now, for all we know, we might be completely surprised after the fact, and we find out that the gushing from Lisa is mutual towards Lisa. But I would imagine, based on some of the people that she will be playing alongside, that she will be a completely new factor to them based on past precedent.
I would be surprised if anyone from this cast watched Survivor New Zealand Thailand. And I think some of them will know who she is because that's the amount of research they did, not necessarily having watched it. And even that, I think, will be limited, which is so interesting because what you might need to know about Lisa if you didn't watch it, even though it is readily available in Australia on 10play, what you would need to know is that she lent into this persona of just being a super fan. Like, instead of hiding her super fandom, and she talked about this at the final tribal council, instead of hiding it, she lent into it of like, I'm just so happy to be here. And like, she'll definitely be doing that on AUV World and will also be to an extent true. But her whole thing is like, she also talked about being like hyper honest. So that she was so honest that when she like sparingly did these like lethal cuts, people were so caught off guard because they couldn't imagine her doing it because she had been so honest. And the crazy thing is that she could literally just do exactly that again. My concern with Lisa, if we're going to get into how we think she might do, is that the perception of these players going in, I always think in returnee seasons, plays out in the game. Like I thought in Winners at War, if like a Boston Rob was next to like a Ben would have had to play an amazing game to beat like a Boston Rob. And there's so many heavy hitters in this cast who are known as like these legends. And Lisa is going to be one of the smaller players compared to them. I think that lowering her perception even to make these cuts might not be enough. Because even if like, any of the Americans or like the Davids and the Lukes have played like a subpar game compared to Lisa, the disparity in where they're coming in is so high. And to be fair, making it to the end when you have that reputation is very, very impressive in and of itself. But I feel like that disparity is hard to overcome, especially if you're leaning into an like underestimated perception to make your moves. But if you're just kind of leaning into what everyone thinks about you, it's very, very hard to change that around amidst heavy competition. So I'm already judging a game I haven't seen, but that's a little bit of my concern for her because, yeah, there's so many legends. And she's one of only a few winners in this cast. But I think people will be like, she won what now? Compared to the known quantity.
I agree with that. But think about the fact that she's one of 5 winners on the World Tribe alone. Like there are much more. There are four.
Yeah,
her, Rob, Parvati, and Tony are all on a tribe together. Theoretically, we could see like an ultimate Hyenas alliance and all the winners getting together. Well, let's get into what her game was in New Zealand before maybe we talk about how it might play out on her second season. Because as you mentioned, so Lisa, when she played Survivor, was 38 years old, which is wild because I was, listening to your deep dive with her and they talk about like, oh, you played up the older women archetype.
Oh my God, I hate myself. I hate 25-year-old me.
Well, to your point though, like I think that was very much speaking towards Survivor's mentality, at least. With
good. It wasn't me.
In 2018, that she was
on the problem. Yeah.
Well, and she didn't necessarily dispute it because I think, to your point, she was very much steering into that curve. I watched a scene recently where she was talking with Tess, and she said in a confessional, "I'm actually gonna say, quote, I just want my family to be proud of me," which is crap. And so, what I really observed watching back Lisa's game and listening to some of her interviews and reading through some of her AMAs and other stuff is that she actually played a pretty prototypical new era Survivor game from an American perspective, in that she was somebody who laid low, knew how she would be perceived and said, okay, I don't need to be the one making decisions. I just need to seed these really important relationships and have them blossom when the time was appropriate. And as we'll get into the post merge, her patience really paid off in a major way. But it wouldn't have occurred if she didn't just sort of both steer into this idea of, hey, I'm a huge super duper fan. I'm just happy to be here. Don't think of me as any sort of threat. I'm just the nice mom from Christchurch, while also at the same time playing a lot of this long game, knowing that she doesn't have to make big swings right now. She can wait for the right ball to come across the plate.
Yeah, I would really compare her game, and that's what I have in my notes, so it tracks with Marianne.
I was thinking the
At the
exact same
time,
thing, yeah.
yeah, at the time, I compared her trajectory to like a Natalie Anderson, and like Erica, and like again, like these new era winners are all in the same trajectory of like, they're not standing still, they're just lying in wait, and then they make this like really key move, and then they like carry that through to the end and they win. But like with Marianne specifically, it was about really knowing your game, really knowing how you're perceived, leaning very much in to what people think about you. And like Marianne was more of an underdog, certainly in the pre-merge, than Lisa, who was like, I had in my notes, kind of in the majority on her original tribe, but
yeah,
towards the
she was
bottom
like
of it.
there was like a I think it was called like the Quiet Five was formed on her tribe initially, but like they always kept her in the know. Like
Yeah,
she
exactly.
was like sort of on the bottom, but not as much on the bottom as someone like Dylan or like the other person that got voted out in his stead. I forget her name. So like she was never in any immediate danger. And then when they had Keisha, yeah, I think. But then when they had a tribe swap, she started getting really close to particular people. She was able to use an advantage of like, hey, your allies are away. I'm standing right in front of you. I'm just a girl standing in front of a possible alliance member. Like, help me help you, to keep using Jerry Maguire quotes. And as a result, she found herself in a really good position going into the merge, especially when she was locked in with a man that would be so key to her game, a young man by the name of Matt.
Yeah, so to compare that to Marianne, like Marianne was like lower in the pre-merge and more of an underdog through the merge, but she was always connected to Taku. And I think Lisa was a bigger part of the power group that were dominating, but she was never, I don't think, at the top of that, and she wasn't going to win with that compared to Matt. So that's where the similar trajectory comes, into effect, as you say, with the new era, where it's, I'm in this position, but I'm not the biggest threat, so I'm not going to get taken out when the threats start getting taken out. Actually, I'm going to do some really impressive move to take out the threat. Marianne does that at the final 6 on Oma, her closest ally, using an advantage. Lisa's going to do the exact same thing. She finds an idol with Matt. He keeps the idol for them, and like Matt wants to go to the end with Lisa, but Matt's going to beat Lisa. It's kind of like a Malcolm Denise type thing.
Yeah.
But she knows she needs to cut Matt, and she makes this amazing final 6 move, which we've spoken about a lot, but I really do think it's one of the best moves of all time, because it is the Sarisa 3-2-1, because a really big part of the season, which we'll talk about, and a complexity that people who have not seen the season might miss, and which Lisa, I think, might play up. But a complexity was that Matt accidentally was friends with Dave from childhood.
Let's clarify here. It wasn't that like, oh, I didn't mean to be your friend, and then I was. It's more so that these two guys separately applied for the show.
And New Zealand is so small.
Had been friends in high school, got cast on the same season, did not know that the other one was going to play until they saw each other on day one on opposite tribes.
Yeah, so that's she's going to sit with Dave at the end. So this is a really big part of the season, which we can talk about, and how she might use it in terms of like her storytelling of the season. But I think, yeah, the impressive thing was that she pulled over Dave in this 3-2-1 to take out his friend without even knowing that they were real friends, and like winning that battle of like relationships, and like getting him to do that. Not that like, Matt was a big, threat in and of itself. And I kind of feel like maybe it's unfair to Dave 7 years later to be like, she manipulated him. I don't honestly remember how much of it Dave should have been doing. He probably should have been doing it anyway, but it was her plan. She got Dave over. It's more like, even if it was good for Dave, there's a world in which he still doesn't do it because that is his real life friend. Like, he was an accidental blood versus water, and she still made it happen and very much action that plan. And that's like the, killer new era style, like final move. Less so actually what the new era has become, if you think about it.
Yeah,
like, that's not Carl's game.
That definitely was the meta of like the first 4
like,
seasons was like, oh, again, it's also interestingly very Australian Survivor coded as well, right? Because for a while, especially again in those first 4 seasons, the narrative was this parabolic woman, as you talk about, Shannon, or this idea of like tall poppy syndrome. You never want to stick your head out too much. So yeah, the way this move came together, it's pretty incredible, because 3 votes prior, Matt and Lisa kind of worked together with their alliance to bring together this new majority to blindside one of their former allies, a guy named Brad, with an idol
Brad.
in his pocket.
Yeah.
And so, not to besmirch the incredible Suri Fields, but like from a certain respect, I almost consider what Lisa was able to pull off even more impressive than what Suri was able to, which is saying a lot. You know, Suri's 3-2-1 was voted the number 21 greatest moment in Survivor history in the recent countdown that I did. But considering the fact that Lisa was dealing with not only the fact that her target had an idol, and, you know, he had gone on like a little bit of, he had won immunity the previous round when she actually wanted to get rid of him. So it was like, okay, now that he felt vulnerable, he might use it. But the fact that, again, she did not realize this, but she had this additional challenge of, okay, she had one person on her side. She had her closest ally, Tara, and she was trying to really tiptoe around the fact that, like, there were 3 other people in the tribe. She could try to bring in 2 of the outsiders in Tess and Adam. Wasn't going to work. Adam was really close to Matt and would have a really tough time doing it. Tess was, I say this lovingly, Tess, the woman who came up with the brilliant lie that there were mattresses at the outpost, and rather than actually getting any sort of advantage in the game. And so she approached Dave, who she did not know was incredibly, I would say, by far, you know, the closest to Matt considering their real life connection. But she does something that's incredibly brilliant in the game, which is knowledge is power, for lack of a better term. And she specifically goes to Dave and tells him, hey, just so you know, Matt has an idol. I was there with him. We found it. Did you know he had an idol? And that was just enough to get Dave to want to turn on him in the moment. This idea of like, it hurts even more that we know each other. And I was open with you about the idol that I found, and you did not reciprocate. What does that say about our bond? And so the fact that she was able to do that, I consider, to your point, one of the biggest moves in global Survivor history, just because of everything she had to overcome, whether she knew it or not.
Yeah, so the complexity with Dave is that she's going to end up sitting at the end with Dave and Tess, and there are 7 jury votes. And this is always the example that I try to refer to when we talk about people saying, well, I'll come over the top and like win on a plurality vote. Now, we have seen a plurality win, but as recently spoken about, it wasn't a plurality win. Like, I feel like the others could have won had they just combined their votes. I mean, it would have been a tie when the 5-3-2. But anyway, like, even then, it wasn't that. It was more actually that, like, this was a different Survivor South Africa season, but more that, like, actually 1 and 2 probably pulled from each other, and like third was, or actually 1 and 3 pulled from each other, and second was probably never getting more votes than that. So for me, I've always said that it's never happened where someone has won because 2 people have like actively split votes, where what would have happened is, say, like 4 people really wanted to vote for Lisa or Dave, and 3 people were definitely going to vote for Tess. It's never happened where like the 4 people just like haven't got it together, and oh my god, no, we wanted one of the 2 of them to win, but now we've split our votes and like the third person won. Like, that doesn't tend, like in an example where it's like, you know, Carl, Joe, and Eva. If like people wanted Joe and Eva to win, like they would have probably got it together so that Joe and Eva could win. They wouldn't have been like, we're splitting these, like, no, oh no, like either way, but unfortunately, like now we've lost. So that's always been the thing. But the thing with Dave is that so much of Dave's final game is that he was secretly friends with Matt. So definitely when I was looking back my old notes from the season, a con that I had about Lisa's game possibly is that like she went to the end with Dave, who 2018 me seems to think maybe could have won, or at least maybe split those votes.
I mean, Lisa herself has said in an AMA since that she thinks if Matt does not reveal their relationship at Final Tribal Council, that Dave wins. That she felt really confident going into day 39, and she spoke a lot of great strengths about her game, as you mentioned, but she felt that people liked Dave more. But what just soured everyone entirely was the second that Matt got up there and just dropped that bomb, because to a lot of people, including the fans, that was considered as something that was, well, Dave did not necessarily, you know, utilize that, purposely say, hey, Matt, come onto this season so I have a guaranteed vote in my pocket. I think for a lot of people, it really colored his game as, you know, a bit of an unfair leg up on them, considering that for the majority of the season, he had somebody helping protect him.
Yeah, people did not like hearing, I think it was the night before at Juryville or Ponderosa or whatever they called it, that they had been secret friends. And Lisa had no way of knowing that that was going to be something to sour the jury on Dave. Now, 2025 me does not think they would split the votes, because I don't think that's something that happens. But it is possible, as you're saying, that she might even think that if they're going to choose one way or the other, now Dave is like a viable candidate for the 4.
Yeah.
Or maybe like a 3-1 if Matt didn't want to vote for Dave, and then I thought that he might have been deciding a tie in 2018 between Tess and Dave. He lost votes due to something that she could not have known about. But also, I'm gonna just take issue with what I wrote in 2018, because to be fair, she also is up against the fact. Well, she's up against the fact that Tess is winning immunities. And she's up against the fact that Dave and Matt were friends. As much as she couldn't have known that it would help her, she didn't know that she was working against it, and it was technically hurting her the entire time. So you have to give a little bit of credit to that. But I think that that's the con that I looked at, and it was a weird thing where Tara quit at the final four, basically.
Right.
Like after we voted out, and was it was 2-1-1.
Probably the oddest 2-1-1 in Survivor history. Usually these are like fun feats of strategic goodness of like, oh my god, they came over the top of these incredibly small numbers. This was more so like Tess had won immunity. She wanted Dave gone. Lisa was concerned that, Dave and Tara might pool their votes and get her out. But Tara essentially like puts down her sword, being like, you two deserve a spot at the end over me. So vote me out. So while it seems like a 2-1-1 on paper, it was much less strategically complex than the other ones by comparison.
It really was a dream for me covering it. I got the first 2-1-1. To be fair, I was still excited about it. Then we were talking about a plurality final tribal council votes, which, to be fair, I was like, that would be the worst case scenario. I didn't want that to happen based on I was rooting for Lisa. I was like, I actually really like Dave, but I wanted the person winning the RHAP show to win and really affirm these values. I also think that I don't know if I explained my plurality final tribal council thing well enough. It is for second and third. It's never happened that second and third have taken votes from each other, so that's first.
Right.
The plurality we got was first maybe lost a couple of votes, but still won on the plurality, but only would have been a majority. And second was never going to get more. Okay, explained it. But I think that that's the one thing you look at. But here's the complexity of that. We've just discussed that. Would Dave have won? It has this massive caveat of they were friends. That's such a massive thing to work against, and to have had it help her in the end for both ways. Lisa, I think, could go on and, again, leaning into this, be like, I want Survivor New Zealand. None of you watched it. I wasn't meant to win. Dave was meant to win, but he was friends with someone, and everyone was so hard done by this blind item from the jury that I won. I mean, she says to you that she thinks it's true. Possibly. I don't know if I think we will never really know. And again, there's enough for her game that it's impressive enough that she was working against that. However, if you want to lean into the perception, which I don't necessarily think she should, but of I'm so non-threatening. Yes, I'm one of the only few winners here, but I won for this reason, and I'm really just a super fan who's happy to be here. She could do that because there's enough there that it's complex enough that, especially if they haven't seen it, they'd just take her word for it and be like, who is Dave? And they would hear that story.
Dave's not here, man. I mean, dare I ask the question, Shannon, considering how much we talked about the lack of research people might have done into Survivor New Zealand, is there a chance she doesn't need to tell anybody that she won? Could she come up with a narrative of I made it to the
No, definitely not.
You don't think so?
No, there's enough people who know she's won. I know George knows she's won.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that because there's definitely enough people who are yeah, and I'm sure JLP on the mat. I just did a podcast about JLP, poor JLP, but about JLP and with the players, and Eden was saying he was going to hide being a super fan, and from the moment that they arrived on the mat, JLP was like, you look like a huge super fan.
You look like a dork.
Yeah, I feel like Jeff is, and US Survivor in general, it's not a JLP thing, it's just a production thing. I feel like US Survivor is a lot, you look like a dog. It's just, US Survivor is a lot more you tell them what you want to. I'm going to keep it super vague. Yeah. Whereas I feel like Australia is no, you're here to be the super fan, you're a super fan. If you're the winner of Survivor New Zealand, I'm introducing you as Lisa, the winner of Survivor New Zealand. And I think enough would know at least to have read the Wikipedia pages, let alone if they watched it.
Yeah, so then I think to your point, she is able to really paint a great picture of yeah, I won, but listen, A, they wanted to probably choose a Survivor New Zealand winner, and there were only two of us. And B, and with no offense to Avi, but B, it was this controversial win, and it was, certainly. I think there was even some people that felt like Tess should have won from a certain fan perspective because she,
they're still bitching about me on Reddit.
Yeah, because she had this underdog story. All of her allies end up getting taken out. Listen, from a voting record perspective, maybe not the best. So she was able to, even though she was left in the dark from a voting perspective, she made her way into the light of the final three. And again, did come within one vote of winning. That's what made this final tribal council, as you mentioned, so interesting, is that Tess had 3 votes locked in, basically, in the allies she lost along the way. So it was not even also about Lisa, or Dave having these 4 votes up for grabs. It's also well, if one of these people goes over to Tess, then
Well,
she wins the season.
and that always felt unlikely. I remember it being like it felt like Tess was never getting less. I mean, fewer. Sorry, mom, grammar. Fewer or more than 3. Like she was definitely getting 3 votes. Those were locked in, but I could never see her getting any of the other 4 who were definitely more on Lisa or Dave or both compared to her. So it was about were they going to split it because then Tess could have won on a 3-2-2, or was Dave going to outright win on the 4-3, which Lisa eventually does. I mean, the Lisa Tess dichotomy, if you just take Dave out of it, was very much, it's something we kind of see often. Like Tess was very much in the underdog role who fought away to the end and she won immunities. Like Lisa was like, I was in control. I made the moves. Lisa was never blindsided. Like she had all the strategic stuff to speak to. And Tess had like the social relationships with a select group that were going to see her through, but wasn't as like broadly social to try and get the votes. And then from a story, again, would appeal to those same people, but again, less so the other 4 that were up for grabs with Lisa and Dave.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is comparing that to the previous season where, Lisa said many times in your interview in the AMA that like at the time she was more so team Tom. She was more so the on the side of this guy who lost all his allies and had all these clutch wins to make his way to the end over someone who had the more straight and narrow path, who was playing the more solid strategic social game and so found himself in less danger. But again, every season is entirely different. And to see, some of the people I think take a lot of umbrage with some of the things that Lisa did, if I remember that tribal council properly. But we also need to remember the fact that, Survivor New Zealand season 2, very good season. I know that we spoiled a lot of key moments from it, but I very much recommend people.
Kiwi moments.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. People should check it out though, because I think we talked about it at the time. I still think it holds true now. It's like a very solid middle school Survivor season, not in their behaviors, but more so in like reminding you of one of these seasons from the teens, of a China, of like Token Cheens, where like it's not gonna like blow you out of the water next level stuff, but it's incredibly solid. The production value is like pretty down to earth. They have idols that are introduced, but there aren't like any huge wackadoo things that are, thrown into the game. Lisa does have a steal a vote that she does use effectively at the merge, but outside of that, there aren't really a lot of other advantages. But from a casting perspective, certainly people did apply. It was season 2, but Lisa was largely dealing with, especially with the person who finished runner-up besides her, people who did not necessarily, bank a lot of their game on Survivor knowledge. And it's going to be very interesting to then see her in a very different scenario where she is playing alongside, maybe she is still, as we mentioned before, the biggest super fan from a global perspective to play on AU versus the world, but she's not necessarily playing with people that have no idea how to play Survivor. Very much the opposite.
Yeah, there's a few things here. I mean, firstly, I don't know that Lisa's like a huge fan of Australian Survivor. Like, I'm sure she heavily did her research. She was like the Australian Survivor just started when she won. I feel like she's much more like a US Survivor fan.
When she did her AMA, and I believe even when she talked with you, she had said she had watched 3 seasons of Australian Survivor.
That was all the seasons there were when she talked with me. When she won.
Well,
not even.
She said that she had watched seasons 1, 3, and 7.
Okay, so that was in the AMA.
So,
right, okay.
So I think she was talking about like 1 as in like the 2002 Australian.
Oh yeah,
Survivor.
she must have, because 7 wouldn't work. It wouldn't have been.
Yes, 7 would have been All Stars, which would have just completed at the time of her AMA. So she knows David's game elite. But I think, as you mentioned, she's incredibly studious. I think the second she found out, assuming the timeline worked out, the second she found out that she was even going to have a chance of coming onto this, she then studied up on all of these Australian Survivor seasons, which is a lot harder to do than maybe American seasons, considering, yes, you have a lot of seasons to catch up on if you haven't watched any American Survivor, but considering how long an Australian Survivor season is, it's a lot of binging in a short amount of time.
Yeah, and I want to talk about Lisa's skills for the game. Like, she has a very, again, perception of herself and how other people perceive her, which we just saw is like very important in US Survivor, and something actually Adam does really well. Adam's a very good comparison. In some ways to that. So ironically, didn't he win?
It's interesting because it's almost the opposite, where people thought Adam won only because of outside of the game information about his mom, and people thought that Lisa only won because of other people's outside of the game information that Dave and Matt were friends.
And actually, the secret third thing is both of those things actually are in the game, because Adam playing with that baggage and not revealing it and it weighing him down the whole time and still doing well is important to the game. And Lisa playing against it is also important to the game. So that's like it really does marry. And even though Adam is not on the season, but I think the thing with her is like, yeah, again, she has like that good perception of herself. She knew that she like couldn't beat Matt. She knew how she had to, you know, counteract that with her move. In terms of a social game, like, I think that she like had those good social relationships to make those moves. As we said, like, wasn't necessarily at the top in her early tribe, but one thing I can be kind of worried about, I guess, is physicality. But even with that in her early tribe, like, she wasn't in trouble. And I said this with Saria, I don't know how much that'll matter in what'll probably be a pretty short pre-emergent. If anything, again, will kind of reduce the threat level. However, if she's needing to get these threat points, I don't know where it is to get the win, and that's my biggest concern. She also, like, she owned her game very well. Again, as playing with a cast, as you said, who were coming up there and being like, would your family be proud of you for like making this like very normal, great, but like normal move of like voting out an ally? Like, yeah, they would be, yes. Like, I'm a nice person and I like made good moves. Like, yes. So she owned that well to a majority of the jury who, again, even if it is that type of cast, even if it was like quite like some of the strategic players, voted for her to win. So I think she's got good skills for the game, but I do think that she's coming in. Everyone's coming in with like some baggage, whether it's like the baggage of the huge reputation,
I mean, hopefully
and
not.
her baggage is the opposite.
They don't want to make things too cushy for these, 2 weak players, of giving them a lot of baggage to come into the game with.
I think she win toilet paper. Why do I remember that? They all won like a random thing, but no. I don't know why I remember that. I don't know what I remember from the season, but yeah, the perception of her, I think, will be interesting. Who do you think that she could play with? Who do you think she will like?
Yeah, so let's get into that, because skip ahead a couple of minutes. I don't think this is an outright spoiler, but there is some speculation that we can look into from one statement. So again, giving you plenty of time.
Was this from before she played?
No.
So, well, then maybe don't say it.
Well, all I will say is that, like, we know that her and Parvati are on the same tribe, and Parvati had like a comment.
No, don't say this.
Okay. I mean, all it is Parvati being like, Lisa said something to me about my game, and that's it.
Oh, well, that's not a spoiler then.
Yeah, well, I just didn't know because
they were on different tribes. That would be very bad.
Yeah, right. I have to remind myself again that they are both on World Tribe. But Parvati did an interview with It Girl. I think like
she mentioned Lisa.
6 of them. Yeah, and so one of the questions she was asked is like, what's one of the biggest, misconceptions about you? And she said that she just played on a season with a woman named Lisa, and Lisa told her basically like, a lot of people think that, you're mean and you're too cool for school, but I actually think you're just a really cool person, and that's why a lot of people want to work with you. And so I think she's going to be able to really, again, weaponize this super fandom, know how to kind of butter up to some of these egos, especially from the American perspective. She had been watching The American Survivor since the very beginning. Here is something from her quarantine questionnaire that she did with Dalton Ross during the pandemic. Who is one player from the US version of Survivor you would love to play with or against, and why?
Sorry.
That is tough, but I'm going to go with my type here and say Suri. Of course, it's Suri. It's always been Suri. I would play with Suri, and I would either die from the fanness of it, or she would beat me, and I would love it either way. Listen, they can certainly bond over the 3-2-1 aspect, though Lisa has confirmed that she did not honestly think about like the past precedent of the 3-2-1 in the moment. She just was more focused on the matter at hand than like, oh shit, did I just do something comparable to Suri Fields? But yeah, this is something that we talk about sometimes with bringing in super duper fans to play alongside some of these legends, of like, how much can you not fangirl over them versus how much do you have to sort of put that in the back of your head and be like, but I'm also here too. I need to play a game and I need to win. And I could see Lisa having enough of a game sense to be like, okay, I know I need to cut Suri down the line, but I will relish working with her. We should also mention the fact that Lisa is like a fierce social strategy gamer. She has done all of these online games during the pandemic.
She's massively into Blood on the Clock Tower. She does like events where they put on Blood on the Clock Tower.
She went to conventions, and listen.
She hosts conventions, I think.
Yeah, and
I saw her at the last convention she went to for lunch. Well, not at the convention, but she came to Sydney for a convention. We got lunch.
And for those of you that have been following all the great Blood on the Clock Tower stuff that we do here on RHAP, you know that like that is a game that is all about deducing if people are withholding information to you as to what they have. And listen, what they have might translate to advantages. It might be more so from a social perspective as to like, okay, who do they have? But I think she's very good in reading people in that regard. Something that she also mentioned with you was like, she when she plays these games so often within the people in her community that like they can immediately suss out when she's lying. Whereas when she went into Survivor New Zealand, like she could just lie her pants off because nobody knew her from a hole in the wall. This one's a little bit different because again, she's a bit more of a known commodity.
Well,
But I wonder if, as you mentioned before, she could kind of at least initially pull off the same thing here. What I will say from a television perspective, and I'm not looking to manifest this. If anything, I'm looking to be incredibly wrong. I could see a chance where Lisa is one of the more purpled contestants on this season because unlike a lot of the people around her, both on the World Tribe and on the AU Tribe, like she is a really down to earth person.
yeah.
She's talked notably a bunch of times about the fact that like producers on New Zealand would be feeding her lines of being like, "Oh, Dave's such a jerk because blank," and she's like, "But I don't think he's a jerk." And so she is not necessarily one to create these big, grandiose sound bites that we know that producers absolutely love from an AU perspective. And we see this all the time with how wonky the AU edit is, right? Like, if you're not the main character of the episode and you're not giving these over the top clips for people to utilize to Kingdom Come, then you're going to be a bit more in the background. I don't think that translates to like Lisa's lack of longevity in the game. Again, I think there's a world where she does make another deep cut because she is once again underestimated. I unfortunately think there's a fair chance that we just might not see a lot of what she's doing.
Yeah, especially when the competition from a TV perspective and from every perspective is so massive. Like, Lisa is so down to earth. Like, it's kind of exactly what you would think the New Zealand representative on the season should be. But
Yeah.
even for New Zealand, I feel like where she like embodies everything you think about, like the niceness of New Zealand at its extreme, even in that. And now she's in this group as a name that, Australian Survivor isn't, necessarily backing compared to their own stars and like the US stars especially. And even the way like Rob Bentley, I feel like he could, not that he might get a huge edit, but I feel like he will be a real like type of player that they'll want to focus on because like it's an easy story to tell with, I mean, she is as well as like the super fan, but
Yeah.
As like the like big strong guy from South Africa, like I feel like they can focus more on that than necessarily Lisa, who, yeah, from a personality perspective, is just like such a nice regular person. And she's there with like Tony. So
Yeah.
that's going to be a crazy disparity.
You bring up Tony. Something that should be noted, and look, opinions can change over the past 5 years, but I know in an AMA at the time, she was not incredibly pro Tony winning Winners at War.
No.
I think she was specifically really against the idea of like some of the stuff that he had been saying about the other contestants from a personal perspective. And something that I thought was really intriguing was in her quarantine questionnaire, she was asked essentially like, what's the biggest thing that you regret from your time out there? And she said, I get a lot of praise for voting out Matt. It's something that often gets messaged to me or comes up on my feed. But when I watch the video of that now, what really sticks out to me is how upset Adam was about voting out Tess. For those that don't remember, Adam and Tess were really close allies. Adam was sort of like misled to believe that it was just going to be an open and shut vote against Tess. So he ends up voting her out. He is part of the 2 in the 3-2-1. And then she goes on to say, when I watch now, I don't think, go Lisa, you are such a strategist. I think, look how much Adam is suffering. You could have prevented that.
She's too lovely. She's lovely.
I've grown
Look
a
at
lot
that.
since Survivor, and I hope now I would be more aware of the personal toll some of my game decisions have on the other people in the game and act to minimize that. What is
Lisa,
wild. Yeah, but see, what's wild about this is like, yes, on the one hand, usually returning seasons are very much marred in emotions, but it's primarily because of the pre-existing connections these people have. That's not the case from the World Tribe, like Suri and Parvati and Tony certainly have connections, but they're not so baked in, maybe from a Suri and Parvati perspective more so, but you're not necessarily going to have Rob Bentley being like, I just can't get rid of Tommy. He and I have this connection. We went to Bonnaroo together. And so I think Lisa has the right mentality for a returnee season, maybe not this returnee season.
Yeah, I don't think that will be affecting her because it's a short season. It's like hyper competitive. It's like go, go, go. It's really not about the relationships. And it's also the caliber of players who've been voted out many times and won and whatever. And like, they're all above it. Like, I don't think she's going to be like, did I hurt Tony's feelings? Like, I think that she will be fine on that. My concern much more is like, I think firstly, Lisa, give yourself permission. You're too lovely. That's the concern. This is the concern from the TV perspective and from possibly the game perspective. But I think that she'll have permission in this season of all. But my concern is leaning too much into how easy it is to be underestimated. And I talk about this all the time. It's like some people should be like trying to overestimate themselves. Like everyone goes and being like, how can I be underestimated? And really you should be, and at least is to be fair, very, very good at this. Like you should be assessing where you're at and then bring yourself up to the right level. However, it's a short game to even do that. Even if you're doing that a lot, you may never get the time to do it. You know what I mean? Like, even in like just a couple of weeks, like even if you're, I think, extremely pushing that, you might not be able to change the perception of just not being on people's radar. And yeah, I also just think it's so easy to be underestimated. Like it's like she'd be like pulling off the same crime twice. Like how could you not? It's like shooting fish in a barrel, and it's so easy to do that. But I think that you've achieved being underestimated. But even if you pull off a Matt level move, I don't know that it's enough in this season with this caliber of competition. So that's my concern. But I will say on Tony, we argued about Tony. She was my guest for the Winners of War premiere, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah.
She was like, I really don't get the Tony thing. And I was like, I insist that you do, because I love Tony more than anything. Was the first episode the ladder episode? Was that in the first episode?
No, that was in maybe, because remember the first episode was the 2-hour premiere with the 2 boots. So I think maybe it was like episode 3 or 4 that we got introduced to Tony's ladder.
Whatever it was, I think it was the premiere that was with her. I was like, Tony's my favorite thing ever. And she was like, not into it. But I can give exclusive information. She has subsequently told me that she gets the Tony thing now. Oh! She realizes he's very intelligent, and she didn't get what he was. I think she listened to his deep dive, and like she gets it now.
So from even the outside, the US perspective on World, I don't know. I could get a little bit of like Matt vibes from a relationship with Rob, where I could see a world where these two sort of lock in as like, listen, we're both winners. We're both from outside Australia and the US. Let's look out for each other. Lisa's more than happy to do that. Another like alpha male to glom onto. And then, like you said, second verse, same as the first. If she feels like there will be a point where if I'm sitting at the end with Rob Bentley, he's going to win again, she could try to make the move to cut him. It's weird to describe her as a hyena because, again, she is one of only 5 or so winners in this entire cast. But again, perception is reality. And much like we saw with Winners at War, I do wonder, like, is there a scenario where if she's sitting at the end with one of these previous winners, or even with like an Australian survivor legend like George or Shawnee, is she going to be able to pull out the win? She's going to have to do an incredible amount, and not to say that she's not capable of doing it, but maybe this is where the shortened game can come back to bite someone like Lisa, one of these lesser known people, because it's like, okay, you only had so many rounds to work with, as opposed to in a longer season, you have more time to sort of either steer away or towards a narrative. You have more time to plan and execute all these things that you can tout. I think reputation precedes you in a lot of ways on this particular season. And as much as I would hate to see, I want Lisa to be able to go to the final 3 again. Maybe wear, an RHAP, maybe wear like a Chizzy hat to the final tribal council this time around.
With the mug. Well, she famously didn't win the Chizzy, which is still an outrage, by the way.
But, and also it should be, it means so much in the fact that she got to play the last season alongside Matt Chisholm, who was the host. It's actually very funny. I watched the moment that it was revealed that she was the winner. And again, due to how like normal she is and how awestruck she was with finally making this decades-long dream come true, like Matt Chisholm is trying to squeeze any soundbite out of her at the live reunion, and she's giving nothing. He's like, oh my God, your fandom, you must be screaming right now inside. She's like, I can't believe it happened. And he's like, anything else you want to say at this moment? So maybe in honor of leaving Matt Chisholm hanging, lovingly so, she'll be able to rock some Chizzy merch within the season.
Yeah, I think as well, when I was watching the final Tribal Council, it's like, remember how dark the cave was at Tribal Council? And that was like such a big part of the season. Yeah, I mean, there's a few things here. Firstly, I said I would never make a winner pick outside of the big mess of connections that she doesn't have. The David to Parvati to Sari, and then through David to Luke to Kirby to Janine to Sarah. Like, there's so many connections there, and Lisa is not in it. It's really not even fair. Like, she's just hanging out in New Zealand. So that's really tricky. I think if she could get to like a George, I think George, she's a little too down to earth for George, but I do think she's like kind of the demographic a little too like.
Yeah, I think George could respect her, but I don't think he would want to go to the end with her. Well, I guess maybe
he would. They're perfect for each other because he'd be like, I'm a like big personality who will like be,
your shield.
Like a bigger, well, like even just like a bigger character than you. and people will vote for that because she's so underestimated. And Lisa might be like, maybe they just don't like George, and maybe they really like me. Like I'm like the nice lady, so the neat lady even. So they actually kind of have what each other need if they could get to that, but they're both kind of screwed from the big mess of it. If she could get through Suri to connect to that, that's a good situation for her. But that's unfortunate too. Like people don't know her. It's kind of like Colby on Heroes vs. Villains. Like they don't know her, and they also don't know her. Like they don't know her actually, and they also won't know anything about her. So it's a strange place to come in. She'll know them. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about from an Australia perspective when she makes the merge, because we're saying when, not if. Who like she would be looking to get with? Like maybe her and Sarah link up, because again, they're both pretty down to earth people. But I wonder if this could be another neither can live while the other survives. You know, like do they feel like
one-time player?
Yeah, like one of them has to take the other one out. They can't have both of those types sitting in the end together. I mean, I think she could definitely go along to get along. I think she talked with you about the fact that she could certainly have conversations with people that don't necessarily share the same lifestyle as hers. But again, this feels like an incredibly different beast when you have such grandiose TV characters out there. And also, you have such a limited amount of time in this season to make those quick bonds. For all we know, Shannon, the post-merge is like a week long. And so that's incredibly different than the 39-day game that she's used to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt Lisa's skills, and I've seen them in action.
Yeah.
I don't think this is the cast for her, but I don't want to, jinx it. I think that, I wish her the best. I hope it was amazing, and I'm super excited for her, and I can't wait to live through her. Like, her being on that beach with Suri alone, I just want to see that reaction. If they're not giving us a lot of Lisa in the edit, just give me the reaction of her seeing Suri, because I don't think people kind of thought Suri would be out there. I think it'll be a real surprise, and I think it'll be incredible. So
I hope there's like a Wayne's World-esque "We're Not Worthy" scene where she's just like bowing to Suri in private. I mean, again, that's going
backed out just from the shock of it.
Yeah, it's going to be so palpably exciting. And again, I think it is so representative of like what this cast means to so many of us, which is like, I truly cannot believe some of these people are getting together, sometimes again, sometimes for the first time, but also Lisa is representative of that as well. It's one of these like real ones know Survivor New Zealand, Thailand, and how great of a game Lisa played. And now, her last name is now Holmes. She's coming in as a bit of a mystery, but we know that she has the intelligence, the detail-orientedness, and the skills to hopefully be able to crack this $500,000 case.
Love it. Well, hey, from 2018 to here, Mike, how much has changed? But still just doing preview podcasts about someone from Survivor New Zealand, Thailand, which is kind of incredible. But okay, we're gonna have more of these. We did the Suri one. We have this. Next will be, I think, David. We're doing that. How are we releasing these? Is it in an order?
Who knows?
No, it's when I schedule them logistically, and then I put them out in that order.
Yeah, we should just go in order of like who will fangirl or boy over the previous person. So of course, David, the natural one, who will freak out upon seeing Lisa on that mat on day one.
Yeah, so Chappelle and I are going to talk about David, and this is coming out every second day. And that's what's happening. Maybe had a lot of content about JLP leaving last week now, which is upsetting. We had a podcast with all the players. Mike and I did a bit of the news on that. So that was fun. At Shannon Gates, we know globalsurvivor.com, so you don't miss any of the coverage. Mike, tell the people where to find you.
At a Mike Bloom type. We're firmly in Big Brother at this point, so I'm doing stuff over at Parade. If you missed any of the great Survivor stuff that we've been doing in the off season as well, I've been doing the postseason interviews for 48. Just mentioned it before, wrapped a countdown of the 25 greatest moments in Survivor history, and assumingly plenty more to come as we gear up for not only Australia versus the world, but also Survivor 49.
Crazy stuff. Well, Lisa, we wish you the best. I'm sorry that this podcast was not positive. It's just because I'm scared, but I'm excited for her.
I'm pumped for her. No matter what. How could you not be? The last time we saw this person, they had all of their dreams come true while wearing an RHAP shirt. As part of RHAP, how can we not be pumped beyond belief to just see her come back? I certainly did not think it would be a possibility considering she won literally several years ago. I don't know how she felt about it. So to have her back here almost feels like playing with house money right off the bat.
Yeah, it's a dream. I mean, the series was canceled, and now she's on AUV World with Suri. Like, she's us, and she won, and we're all winning for that. So thank you all for listening. Thank you to our team behind the scenes. Thank you, Mike, as always. I'll see you in 7 years. We do this again.
Yeah.
Someone else from the
2032. We'll be back here when Dave comes back with a vengeance.
Wonderful. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.